Good afternoon and welcome to CS Week Women in Utilities webinar series. I'm Lisa Collins with CS Week, your moderator today. We invite you to join us at CS Week and Conference 38, May 5th to the 9th at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center in San Antonio, Texas. The Women in Utilities Networking Reception is complimentary for our female attendees and is scheduled for May 6th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. in Ballroom C3 at the Convention Center. This program is being recorded and available for playback, as are our other archive presentations found under the Educational Venues tab on our website at csweek.org. Attendees are encouraged to upload questions in the Q&A panel as they arise. However, all questions will be held until after the presentation for the Q&A segment. Today's program's topic is Women Resource Groups in the Energy Industry. It is being co-presented by Gail Allen with Kansas City Power and Light and Barbara Tyran and Becky Wingenroth with EPRI Solutions, Electric Power Research Institute. I'd like to give you a little background on our speakers today. Gail Allen is a Senior Manager of Customer Intelligence for Kansas City Power and Light, where she currently is responsible for the Customer Insights team. They perform traditional customer market research, which includes J.D. Power, online customer panels, as well as make recommendations for customer marketing campaigns. Gail is Vice President of Women Inspired to Learn and Lead, WIL, at Kansas City Power and Light, and this is an employee resource group. Becky Wingenroth is a technical leader, principal at the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI. In this role, she supports key strategic initiatives and demonstrations for the power delivery and utilization sector with a focus on energy utilization and renewables integration. Currently, she is chairman of EPRI's Technical Women's Network. Barbara Tyran is Director, Washington and State Relations in EPRI's office in Washington, D.C. She serves as the principal liaison between EPRI's executive management and Congress, the administration, the National Trade Association, the national leadership of the state public utility commissions, state legislators and regulators, and the Washington energy community. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panel for joining us today, and I'll turn this over to Gail.
There you go. Thank you very much. And I thank everybody attending for allowing us to talk about our ERG, we call them at KCP&L, which is WIL, Women Inspired to Learn and Lead. So as you can see on this slide here, we've been established in 2009, and actually that was kind of an important date because that was the year after KCP&L purchased Aquila Operations in Missouri. And it was kind of like a merging of two companies, and if any of you have been on, have gone through that where your companies have merged together, there's a lot of stuff going on, obviously, a lot of processes and a lot of just people, issues, and, just kind of trying to build a little happy family. So the company came up with the idea of resource groups, and we quickly jumped on the bandwagon to do WIL, and I was one of the founding members of the WIL organization, and it was just a way for us to kind of form a bunch of us women together and say, we are here to help lead our company through change and then help lead, our women employees and kind of give us a platform to talk together. So as I'm talking, I'm sure you've looked at our mission that we have here, and I'll tell you that this mission evolved. It didn't start out like this. We had some pretty lofty ideas of what we were going to do when we were first forming WIL, and we thought, boy, any woman that was in WIL, we think the HR department should look at us because we're, doing all this professional development, and we should be the pool of candidates that they look at for promotion within the company. And we quickly found out that was, again, a lofty idea. So we kind of had to tone ourselves back a little bit and worked with our leadership of our company and just, I feel like there are a couple other resource groups in our company. One of them is, Vista, which is more a Hispanic organization that's looking for community outreach. There's another one that is based on innovation. So we've got another one that has healthy mind and spirit employees, kind of all about health-based. So really good, solid ERGs. And WIL ends up being like one of the most solid ones out of all of them. And even though those ideas I just told you, the other ERGs, it's a really good, solid membership base. As you can see, 170, and just very well respected by our leadership of our company as we've, again, taken our mission and kind of honed it down a little bit. So like this next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the objectives that that we do. I mean, we are very big about every month. We have the organization of Will is we have your typical board of directors, a president, a vice president. That's my role, secretary and treasurer. But we have a lot of committees, and within the committees we have like a committee for professional development. We have committees for we have a book club committee. We have the communications committee. We have a Women of Achievement Awards committee that looks and tries to talk about on a frequent quarterly basis women that are making achievements in our company, and then on an annual have an award-based Woman of Achievement Award type thing. So a lot of committees, committee members, and co-chairmen of that committee, and we utilize those committees to help us figure out what we're doing all year long and achieve these objectives, and as well as kind of a way to mentor and work with committee members. You'd be surprised on some of them are kind of new employees in the company, or maybe even younger, and we're trying to kind of combine some more senior leader, director, senior management level with more of a lower level person in the company to make sure that we can help mentor them and teach them how to lead committees or how to document stuff like that. So it's really a lot about growth and mentoring and things like that. Will is very much centered around that. I would also tell you that networking obviously is very big in any of these things, and I know that EPRI will tell you that because that's how I met a lot of the folks there, was just through our networking events. And my little caveat there on networking is to make sure that we sometimes have had issues that when Will first joined, that networking seemed to be just a happy hour thing, and people didn't like that. We wanted more networking opportunities at work, et cetera. So I just think that first objective about developing ourselves through that is very strong, and it kind of inspires us through everything, the inspiring members, providing people opportunities. Like I said, the opportunities to develop yourself as a leader. One of those ways is being in the committee, not just a leader of the committee, but a member of the committee, and collaborating. And you'd be surprised on how many people don't really, at different levels of the organization, don't really get to lead meetings or really feel like they have a voice in what's going on sometimes in the company, and Will is a place to do that in a small way, to be able to give them an opportunity to grow. Of course, with everybody, culture is big with every company, and it was very big when the two companies merged, as I mentioned in the first slide. So it was really a big thing about having a winning culture, or a way that we were going to kind of define who we were as a company as we merged together. And I feel like 5 years later, it's actually been more than 5 years, that we really have kind of overcome some of those hurdles, and doggone it, I'd like to think Will was part of that. Anyway, the last couple objectives, I think, certainly opportunities for each other. But I also want to mention the last one about sharing in the community and active involvement. Being part of a utility, I'm assuming all utilities are pretty much like this, that want to be, active in the communities for the customers that we serve, and, driven by, a presence besides just sending a customer a bill. And so Will is no different. We are trying to help KCP&L achieve our some of those goals of community awareness, and we have actually partnered, I'll talk a little bit later on, with a women's employment network, and making sure that we're kind of focusing some of our efforts in that way. And when we do events, like for example the year-end event, we'll do like a Christmas gift drive, things like that helps drive the community as well. So those are our objectives. I think this slide right here talks a little bit about the second year into Will or so, we just said, how are we doing? And of course, this is my favorite slide, because as when Lisa introduced me, she talked about my background, and I'm in market research for KCP&L. So obviously we love surveys, and we love measuring. You can't improve upon things that you can't measure. So we've done some of that, and we actually worked a little bit with internal surveys, but we also worked with another group, women's organization, and participated in their utility survey, and we found these answers. We found the answers that we found out that people that are participating in Will, their employee engagement is has increased. And I don't know about all you guys in your companies, but employee engagement is big here at our company. We spend a lot of money every 2 years measuring employee engagement. There's all kinds of data around that says that engaged employees are happy employees, and companies that have engaged employees are more successful companies. So it's big. It's big to our company. We're always doing things to make sure that we're engaging people, and we're proud to say that we believe that Will is a key part of that, especially in the women membership of Will. I think that, again, willingness to stay with a company, that speaks a lot about, again, a lot of this kind of centered around when we surveyed this 2 years after we started the group. There was a lot of folks that came over from Aquila and a lot of unhappiness, and so we specifically asked that question because we wanted to make sure that people were happy and wanted to stay there and weren't ready to jump ship. And I think that this was a key point to us about the value that we were providing. And I think the last one, about 12% of the people believe that people have helped them promote their advancement. That kind of speaks back to when I first talked about the mission statement that we were operating under. We really thought, boy, if you were part of Will, you were just going to go really far in the company. And I think that that's why we measured that, and we found out, a lot of people didn't think they were going to be promoted just because they were part of Will. And I think that was our rude awakening to say, well, that's kind of a silly measurement because that should not, it can be a factor. And I believe when I say it can be a factor, people that participate in Will shows that they care about the culture, they care about networking, they care about mentoring, which is all great leadership skills. So it correlates with the fact that people that are in Will should, should advance a little bit more in the company. And so there is some correlation there, but certainly it's not causation there. And so, like I said, we measured it, but it's just an interesting little side note. The last part about is learning and development, and I talked about our first objective is we're really big about learning and development. I don't think that we would work real well as just a resource group that was just about networking. I mean, we really, every quarter we have something about professional development, and every quarter we have the book club. And I will tell you truthfully, the book club doesn't have a ton of participation, but we just did lean in, which a lot of us have read that book, and I felt like it was written specifically for me. But boy, there was a lot of attendance at that book club meeting, and so much so that we did the following quarter a follow-up to lean in because it was such a great book. So a lot about development. We've had guest speakers, our annual guest speaker. We had Roshan Parrish, a public communications company in Kansas City that worked with Hillary Clinton's campaign. We've had the first woman Speaker of the House in Missouri be an annual speaker for us. So there's been so many opportunities to learn and develop from women leaders in our community, as well as learning and developing amongst ourselves. And then lastly, I think that we're helping each other learn new skills, and it kind of just goes with that. If you're a friend with somebody, you know somebody, you're more willing to help them on the job, and so that last 54% I think is a really nice number, saying that people feel like they've obtained new things and skills that will help them in their career. Okay, so some of the things that what we do know about Will is that, again, our members, people in Will, they've told us that, I want some more things. I want more personal development plans. We specifically put this in here and told this to our officers of our company and our HR department because we have a dream that every person, at least everybody in Will, and we really wish more, had Will, our women's network, as part of their development plans. And I don't know about you guys in your company, but we have development plans, or you produce it for yourself every year about what you want to do and improve upon you in the job. And I think this speaks volumes about if you put Will in there and the officers of our company and HR department values that you put Will in there and that you are part of that organization and attend those professional developments, they believe that is a tangible component of your development plan. So that's really nice. And the satellite programs, that was just put that in there to let you know that as a utility company that's over a lot of different service territories and people working, we're actually in 2 states, in Missouri and Kansas. We have we have a lot of feedback that people that work at the headquarters office have a lot of opportunities to do things like this, and I'm going to be honest and truthful with you that most of the members are part of our headquarter membership, and most of the attendants come from headquarter folks. Now, a lot of that is because of we are also, KCP&L has a lot of union employees, and those are a lot of challenges, even with the women union employees, to be part of a resource group and be able to give up their time during work hours, or even, you know, early, right after work hours to be able to participate. So there is a lot of feedback that we're getting that they want us to push beyond what we're doing here in the headquarters, and we have tried and we have done things, and we continue to strive to say, you know, if somebody wants it in some other of our offices, in our field offices, we're trying to make sure that we get them involved. And anyway, and then I think the last thing is another big keynote for you guys to take away too, is that it won't work unless the officers or our leadership of our company believe that will is important, and they contribute to our success. And so as a result, I'm telling you what, that we have our next professional development event is in May, and we have one of our board members, our board of director members, a woman, is going to be at our professional development and talk to us about, she's, you know, very good person. Her name is Ann Mertlow, and she actually is the president and CEO of United Way of Central Indiana, and she's going to be coming to Kansas City to talk to our WIL members. And that all was made possible by, obviously, an officer of our company. And actually, all the big speakers that we ever get here is always made possible by an officer. And I'll tell you that we even have some of the officers of our company leading our book club. So when I talked about the Lean In book by Cheryl Sandberg, our vice president of procurement led that book club meeting. So, and you'd be surprised, if you get an officer of our company to come to the WIL meeting, a lot of the members will show up for that meeting. So that's why we put that in here, because we think that's a very important thing about us. So finally, I'm kind of wrapping this up here just to tell you that we are just so excited about what we're doing here. And we think just going forward, you know, sometimes some of these organizations start and then they lose a little bit of steam as they go on. And we just keep thinking our future just continues to look bright. And as we move forward, I mean, we've had themes. Every year we've started doing themes to make sure that all of the professional development plans and all the, you know, just any of the events and stuff like that kind of center around that theme. And this year's theme is energizing our career. I know that's kind of creative, isn't it, for a utility company? That's where I would probably hear you guys laughing if you were unmuted. But anyway, so we have a great theme this year, and we're trying to make sure we focus around that. This WOW, the W-A-W, is WIL at Work, and we have really started a formal small mentoring group of people, and where we actually signed mentoring to different people. We had people sign up to say, I want to be part of a group, and then we made those assignments. Now, early feedback is telling us that sometimes assigning mentorships and groups doesn't always work. We're seeing a little bit of success, but we think we might have to revamp it, but that's okay. You got to try, and you got to move on forward. I mean, I think we're finding out that probably organic mentoring is going to be the best, but you know, sometimes you have to help facilitate this to happen. And again, there's a lot of leaders in our company, and we're asking these WIL leaders to reach down into the other members and help mentor them in of a more formal way. And sometimes if you don't ask it for it to happen in a formal way, it doesn't happen. So that's why we kind of actually created a real mentoring group around that. Again, the number 3 was about, you know, getting out there and doing satellite events, targeting some different locations in our company. I'll tell you, we have a big call center operations out in Raytown, Missouri. It's about 5 miles away from our headquarters, and we have had events out there. Sometimes they're not very well attended because, again, you have the nature of union employees and shift work and stuff like that. But we're trying, and so that was my example there. And then the next two are kind of showing about how we are reaching out into the community. Kansas City, Missouri has a organization called Central Exchange, and it's made up of a lot of women and, you know, organizations in Kansas City, or just individual women from different businesses can join, and there's a lot of lunch meetings and other meetings, and it's just a way to exchange with each other. A part of Central Exchange, they have WeSTEM, which is the women in science and math and technology. I forgot what all those acronyms stand for, but it's kind of like people like in our industry. And then lastly, Women's Employment Network is an at-risk organization in Kansas City for women that are trying to re-enter the workforce, or for, you know, women that lost their job for some reason and they're trying to build up their skill set to be able to go get a better job or a new job in the workforce. And this Women's Employment Network does all kinds of stuff, from training to actually providing some of the women appropriate clothing for interviews and for their first days on the job. So obviously that's a really nice fit for us to partner with them and work with them on events. We've held mentoring events or training events. Like, for example, one of the events we held with them was how to build an elevator speech. And we had the Women's Employment Network, some of their class, they have a graduating class every year. We had them come here and we talked to them about mentoring and elevator speeches and, you know, how to kind of sell yourself a little bit, which was a pretty lofty concept, but it really had us kind of working back and forth with some of those women right here at our corporate offices. So that was really nice for us. So we felt like we had some good success there. So anyway, oops, I jumped over to Becky's slide. Let me go back. Anyway, so that kind of wraps up my part of the talk. I know I talk fast. I hope I took a couple breaths within there, but at this point I'm going to turn it over to Becky from EPRI.
Thanks, Gail. Thank you, everyone, for participating today and giving us the opportunity to share our experience with EPRI's Technical Women's Network with you and beyond our experience. So we appreciate the opportunity to gain insights from people that are presenting from KCP&L, as well as some of the folks on the phone participating. Maybe you'll be asking us questions or sharing experiences with us that we can learn from. Barbara and I are looking forward to this discussion. But before we get started, I just wanted to also acknowledge and thank Gail Allen from KCP&L, who was just speaking, for actually making this connection for us. I know Gail from our EPRI meetings, and we had a women's network event at our power delivery and utilization advisory meetings. And when we had that event, we decided, you know what, we should be working together and supporting each other. That's part of our mission. And Gail basically introduced us to the CS Week folks, Denise and Lisa, and thank you for hosting it. So Barbara and I are going to talk a little bit about EPRI's mission and our organization and how successful it's been and some of the new things that we're doing with you. And as we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about our organization. Our mission is similar to what Gail had expressed from KCP&L. We actually say that we support technical women in achieving balanced, productive, and successful lives, both professionally and personally. So there may be women in different stages of their careers or lives that want to concentrate more on furthering their career, or maybe there's others that would rather just balance their lives and they want to be very professional and involved in their work, but also know that they have other priorities they need to balance too. So our goal is to support everyone, whatever their goals may be. And in order to do that, we have had, essentially from the beginning of our organization, about 6 initiatives to support our mission. We've actually added one in the last 2 years, and Barbara's going to talk a little bit about that. But our initiatives are leadership development through skill building, internal networking, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later, external networking that Barbara will talk about, general well-being, philanthropic activities, and membership value. The way we're organized right from the beginning was with a steering committee who really demonstrates the leadership of the entire organization. And each one of our steering committee members leads one of those initiatives that I just talked about. We basically get together on monthly calls for planning purposes to plan out the rest of the year and our activities as well as our strategies. And I'll talk a little bit later about a strategy actual face-to-face session that we hold annually to make sure that we're aligned with our company goals. In the last couple of years, we've also designated what we call office leads. If you understand that EPRI is an international organization, and we have main offices in Palo Alto, California, Knoxville, Tennessee, Charlotte, North Carolina, and smaller offices in Dallas and Washington and a few other places. So it's a bit of a challenge for us to really try to make sure that everyone as part of our network can not only connect together at our events through the phone and webinars, but also have some face-to-face time with each other. So we've designated people in our main offices that can actually help with the logistics for each of our events. They hold local events each year for those face-to-face contacts within their own office area. They really take note on who new employees are when they're introduced into EPRI and personally introduce themselves, inviting them to our organization so that employee feels very welcome. And we have also an office lead that's designated for remote employees because with EPRI, we have anywhere from 60 to 100 employees that are like myself. I actually have an office in my home. And I want to stay connected with everyone. And so we have an office lead who sort of gathers them up, and we have our own phone activities. Sometimes we try the video aspect of it, but just keeps us connected. In the last couple of years, we've had some things that we've been asked to do by not only our senior officers who are our sponsors, but also through surveys that we do annually with our organization. And what we were asked is to make our membership more inclusive. Previous to about 2 years ago, our network was sort of an invited guest only. You sort of had to qualify to get in. And we found that that was pretty exclusive, and a lot of people were very much offended and turned off by the fact that perhaps they wouldn't be eligible. So one of the things we did was actually opened up our membership eligibility to any EPRI employee supportive of our mission, and that would include males. So it's been really interesting to see the response in the last year and a half or so since we've implemented that new policy, and I think it's been a very positive thing for us. I mentioned we added our local offices with the office lead position. That also has helped with the face-to-face networking. We, like Gail and KCP&L's group, have better defined personal development plans. What we've done is actually surveyed both our members as well as management to determine where our focus should be regarding training and development of our employees. And so we try to have our events focused on what the results were from that survey. We also have encouraged our members and those management folks to actually have as part of their goals the development of our members. So, for instance, if our members are part of the leadership of the Technical Women's Network, have that as part of their goals, or if our members has something that they would like to develop to further develop their career, we actually ask the member to say participate in one of our events that specifically focuses on that type of training so that the employees recognize for participating and they are encouraged to attend that. That we've really focused on in the last year and a half, and we've seen an uptick in engagement and participation because people feel like their efforts in supporting the network not only help them through their own career, but are also recognized. We've added the external networking, and Barbara was actually added to our steering committee, and I'll let her talk a little bit about that later. I don't want to steal her thunder. And we also, as part of my role as the chairperson, are better linked to other EPRI organizations. For instance, there's a Toastmasters group, there's a Read to Lead. It's very similar to KCP&L, early career networks, and people and performance, which is what some of you might consider human resources. They have various programs that they're developing, and it's silly for another organization within EPRI to try to accomplish the same thing and duplicate efforts. So we've had a very concerted effort in the last year and a half to work with these other organizations and have joint activities, which we, of course, are very open to doing with all of you that are on the phone today, too. Lastly, we've created a SharePoint site for our organization, which is very much helping with communications. We have all of our calendar invites now through that SharePoint site and calendar. We highlight different people in our organization. All of our, or most of our activities are recorded so that they can be posted on that SharePoint site in case one of our members isn't able to attend. Before I hand it over to Barbara, I just wanted to, I'm not going to go through all of these, but give you an idea of how many activities we do in a given year. So, for instance, in 2013, we had about 15 different activities throughout the year. Some of them were local events, some of them were webcasts, different speakers, internal speakers, officers, external speakers, some of which we pay a nominal fee for. So, you know, basically we're trying to get something for everyone. Not every one of these events is obviously attended by everyone or is really suited for all of our members. But I can definitely say that all of our members will benefit from at least one of these activities. And that would be our goal, and hopefully more than one. So with that, I'm going to turn the slides over to Barbara, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of those activities. Barbara?
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Becky. And I have to acknowledge Becky's leadership as the chairperson of our EPRI Technical Women's Network. The progress that she cited over the last few years is directly attributable to her skills in motivating our team and reaching out so successfully across the whole organization, which, as she mentioned, is a global organization. So thank you, Becky, for making TWIN as successful as it has been. What I'm going to talk about right now is a little bit more on some of the types of events that we've had. And again, there are a number of characteristics in those events, and Gail mentioned some of these as well, including professional development and physical well-being, educational opportunities, networking and mentoring opportunities, community service, and of course, as a global enterprise, making sure that all parts of EPRI, particularly here in the U.S., but all parts feel connected, even though we are in different geographic locations. So let's begin with a chronology of just exactly what types of events we've had. I mentioned community service, and of course I think everyone's familiar with Race for the Cure, which we supported in our 3 major offices in the United States last fall. We also, last fall, had a leader come in from the outside, and Paula is with Claim Leadership, and talked a lot about just what is success holistically, what does that mean? And that was a very popular event, and I think will be repeated in the near future. So that would give you an example of how we have reached out externally as well to bring in outside leaders. Continuing in the theme of outside leaders, Becky Blalock is a new EPRI Board of Director, and we're delighted that she's also a best-selling author and is going to be speaking next week on her book, Dare, which everyone has been reading in anticipation of her webcast, and so I think that will be a very successful event. We've been actually very much anticipating this, and because of Becky's very hectic schedule, why this has been anticipated now for a few months. So we finally have the date established, and she'll be speaking to all of the EPRI Technical Women's Network. Continuing through the themes of our various characteristics for events, we also had a well-being meeting. This is in anticipation of the holiday challenge, which I'm sure for everyone is always a particularly interesting period of the year with lots of celebration, but also the equal opportunity for overeating and under-exercising. So we try to emphasize physical well-being at this time of the year during the holiday period as well. And then continuing with the events for last year, EPRI has a number of external advisors, and one of those groups of external advisors is what we call our Public Advisory Council, which is comprised of 30 different individuals who have energy expertise but are not currently affiliated with the electric utility industry. And one of those individuals, Karen Johnson, whose photograph you see, is a former president of United Ways of Texas, so very strong community service background herself, but also the new, as of January of 2014, the new CEO of Power Across Texas. So she brings not only an energy background, but also a public spirited community service background, not only to the EPRI Advisory Council, but also she spoke to the Technical Women's Network and then joined us that evening for a reception to talk a little bit about what her background has meant to her and just a little bit more about her career trajectory, and answered a lot of questions that was open to all employees. I'm going to shift gears now from talking about some of the events that we have just had or hope to have in the very near future to talk a little bit more about the area that I'm working most closely in, which is external networking. Becky mentioned the various EPRI offices, and I should emphasize that in our 3 major regional offices, which is Palo Alto, California, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Knoxville, Tennessee, they are all campuses that are not in downtown urban locations. So external networking is a very real and important part of what EPRI women are seeking from the Technical Women's Network. And as we look out on the landscape of other women's organizations, including, of course, the one we're participating in today, we see that there are, and by the way, this is just a handful of them. There are dozens, scores of different women's organizations, many of them also focused on the energy and environmental arenas. But I selected a few to put on the screen just to give a sense of the proportion of those organizations as well as their geographic breadth. And the Women's Energy Network, I'm based in Washington, D.C., has a very strong chapter here in the Washington area, as does the Women's Council on Energy and Environment. But all of these organizations are very broad geographically and are open, I should add, to new local chapters being established in cities where they may not currently exist. As we continue to build that external network, we also are focusing on virtual organizations. So you see there the IEEE Power and Energy Society has a Women in Power, which is a global enterprise and virtual in nature and therefore very accessible to all. Although the virtual organizations are quite powerful, we still have found that from feedback from our surveys that it is in the face-to-face communications and face-to-face interactions that the most successful networking occurs. And so for that reason, we have tried to reach out to bring outside speakers into EPRI and to interact with other organizations, either by inviting them to our campuses or by going to their particular offices, and also to keep that communication alive so that the relationships continue to be cultivated and grown. Now, one of the more interesting women's organizations actually stems from something that the administration, the United States presidential administration, is leading, which is the Clean Energy Ministerial, which occurs around the world and actually will be in Seoul, Korea in 2014. But as a component of that Clean Energy Ministerial, they formed this women's group, which now has about 30 U.S. ambassadors here in this country, and they support a number of different activities, including educational outreach and also a mid-career awards program for women who are qualified. The residential home for this virtual organization here in the United States is the Department of Energy. And if anyone has questions or would like to learn more about this organization, it's all publicly available at DOE. So you can certainly become a member. There's absolutely no cost or prerequisites to become a member. And so this has shown us that there are a number of ways, in addition to the face-to-face encounters, there are a number of ways that we can connect with women all around the world who are also working in the field of energy and environment. And then finally, we were quite delighted that one of our own Technical Women's Network members, Shan, who you see pictured there, was able to participate in January of 2013 in a Women in Engineering event sponsored by IEEE, but also jointly sponsored with Google, whose headquarters is just a few miles from our EPRI Palo Alto office. And so they had an important conference that took place there, and she was an active participant in that conference, and then also, of course, is very active within our Technical Women's Network, which we appreciate. So with that overview of external networking opportunities and some of the major events that the Technical Women's Network has been having, I'm going to turn it back to Becky, who will wrap up the EPRI presentation.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And as we move forward to the next slide, I just wanted to say that incorporating the external networking into our objectives and initiatives was really important. As you can see, Barbara's done a spectacular job in trying to identify those organizations in which we should coordinate with. It was really, really meant for EPRI women to sort of get outside of ourselves. You know, talking to each other all day doesn't necessarily make you grow. So it was really been important to do that. One of the other things that we feel is really very necessary and important is volunteer appreciation. So you have to remember that our Technical Women's Network is done on a voluntary basis. So a lot of the work we do is outside of our regular work hours, of course. And so we feel a need to show appreciation in several different ways. We give very small, but it's still a recognition, gift cards, $10 gift cards out to people that have helped us organize events, people that are on our committees, because it takes, I think it's about 40 people that are on all of our different committees to pull these events together. As well as when we have our events, we actually do a drawing for showing up and participating. And so that's very popular because people really like to go away with a prize if they want to. So that's worked in the last couple of years also. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our annual summer strategy session. It's basically continuous improvement. I want to recognize the people that were the pioneers of our Technical Women's Network years ago. It's very hard to get some of these organizations put together and have them work right. So they were really, really wonderful people that decided to do this. When I worked for a utility, I was part of a women's organization. I know some of the challenges that can occur. So every year we have a strategy session basically looking at continuous improvement and raising the bar, which we've really tried to do you know, all of these years, whether, you know, Barbara and I were on the steering committee or not. But at these annual sessions, we make sure we're aligned with our executive sponsors. You know, we work with them to determine what other things that we should be considering that perhaps we have not thought of ourselves. We also review the results of our annual member survey so that we're hearing from our, quote, customers, if you will. We coordinate with those internal organizations, review plans for each of our major initiatives. So each steering committee basically gives an overview of what they're planning for the following year. And we also roll over our steering committee members because, you know, too much of anything may not be so good. So we think it's important to get fresh ideas and new people involved, and that's what we do every year. 2 people will typically get off of our steering committee, and we welcome 2 new folks on. So that basically gives you an overview of what we're doing at EPRI, and I think it's probably a good time to open up for questions. We'd love to discuss any of these things with you, as well as Gail, I'm sure.
Well, thank you, Gail, Becky, and Barbara. That was a very informative presentation, and we enjoyed it immensely. We have had some really great questions come in, and the first one that came in, it's actually two-part. It goes to both KCP&L and to EPRI. So I'll read the question, and then I'll field, I guess, first to Gail, and then we'll move over to EPRI. The question is, did Will at KCP&L and Technical Women Network at EPRI start as a grassroots employee group and then gain corporate support, or did these groups grow from corporate support from the beginning? So, Gail, would you like to take that first?
Yes. Well, we actually, we never started at 170 members. What we started was, it was a little grassrootsy, meaning when the two companies joined together, it was like a, I don't know, just a natural gravitation of some of the women leaders in the two companies, a mixture of both, and trying to say, let's get together and let's create an organization. And in the meantime, somebody said, you know what KCP&L is doing are these employee resource groups. And what KCP&L does is they seed us with $1,000 per year to run our ERG. And that's where we would cover any kind of expenses that we have for outside speakers, any kind of awards, like we do a few awards, just like Becky said, and just a few other, like if we did a happy hour, social hour, we would buy the appetizers, not the alcohol, things like that. And you'd be surprised, $1,000 goes quite a bit away, for us to do this great thing. So it did start out small, but then because we are kind of a funded ERG from the company, we have support for a website. IT has a SharePoint site that they have out there that we load all of our information. We have support from corporate communications that, we'll include in our employee communications when our events are happening, stuff like that. So that's how we can gain a lot of momentum. So I think the answer is, yeah, we started grassroots, but as we went through the ERG process, I also have to mention that the ERG, you just can't say, oh, I got an ERG, give me $1,000 a year. We actually had to have an entire board of directors and bylaws, and there's some formality behind that too.
Okay,
thanks,
that sounds great.
And this is Becky from EPRI. We actually had a little different experience. We had one of our senior vice presidents, Hank Courtright, who took an interest and saw the value in developing the women at EPRI. As well as the rest of the industry, of course, at that time, and still to a little bit, we don't have as many women as men in our organization. So we felt a need to get that support, and Hank really took that on himself and developed the organization probably in around the year 2007, got some of the upper middle management women to support it and started the first steering committee and started having events. It's evolved over time. And I think we have more events that can involve more people now, but I really give credit to those first pioneers, including Hank, for taking it on and helping us start this. And I think it's very interesting it was started from a male, when we also had female officers at the time.
Well, that's a follow-up to a question you did have. It said that you'd mentioned that, any employee is eligible to join this women's network, and the question was, do you have any male members? So did you want to maybe...
Yes, thank you. I was just looking over the membership list today because we have grown. It probably started about 30 or 40 way back when. And I was going to say that we've grown to 60 or 80, but we actually have about 120 members right now. And specific official members, I would say, include Hank. But with all of our events that we have open to employees, we are seeing, I'd say, a small percentage, anywhere from 10, 20% of males show up for our events, and they tell us and give us feedback that it's been very valuable to them. So we're sort of proud of that.
Would be too. That's amazing. Well, so I have
and this is Barbara. I was going to add to Becky's point, which is she's absolutely right that Hank Courtright should get the credit for this, but part of the demographic change within EPRI and perhaps within the industry itself on a broader scale was that EPRI was created about 40 years ago and was primarily men in those technical fields, and then as those men aged and the demographics began to change, then in about the mid-2000s, as Becky said, why we were looking to add some new early career people to the Institute, and many of those were women. And so I think part of what Hank saw was a way to bring those early career women into our organization, and also, quite interestingly, simultaneously to establish an early career network similar to the Technical Women's Network that would support both young men and women in the early part of their careers. And thanks to Becky's efforts, we've reached out very successfully to that early career network, and so now we often jointly get together and sponsor activities.
Okay. Well, that would probably be a good so go into this next question. It says, how do you get male employees to attend your sessions? So if you have that joint networking, that would probably be a great facilitator for that, correct?
That's one of them. But one of the other things that we decided to do is we have a weekly newsletter that goes out to the entire company through email. And prior to this time, you know, we may have had our Technical Women's Network events announced on those emails, but it wasn't really clear who could attend. And we've made it a point now saying all employees are welcome to attend. And that's how we basically, and we also have a lot of our officers, some of who are male, participate on these things. And so, you know, help introduce the speakers, those kinds of things. And they are very much welcoming. And with that senior support, it gets people's attention. And a lot of our activities also explain some of the direction that EPRI is taking, and sometimes we have, like for instance in January, we actually had a Bring Your Manager to Twin event in which our Senior VP of all the R&D was going over a new initiative for EPRI. Well, you know, there's a double whammy there. They're going to support their employee and learn more about Twin, but also learn something about what the company's doing. So that was well attended.
Hey, this is Gail. I wanted to pop in and throw a couple points about the male membership at our Will group. Number one, our executive sponsor is our COO of the company, which is a man. And I sometimes think he gets a little uncomfortable when he's around us, but whatever. God love him, he tries. And then I will tell you that we do have male members, not that many, but and it seems like the same ones come to the events that they do, and we're really happy they do. And actually, one of my direct reports is a member, and he takes pictures for us at our event because, you know, we seem to get a lot more male attendants that are coming from like corporate functions, and especially I work in marketing and public affairs, so it's mostly a woman-dominated group, but we have the men kind of come just because they want to see what's going on with us women in the world. But I'm going to put one little caveat in there, and it might sound bad, but I'm just going to say it and be open and honest here. Is in some of our earlier professional development sessions, we used to have sessions about, one time somebody had one about women's issues and, you know, some of the challenges. And I'll tell you, even the Sheryl Sandberg book about Lean In had, you know, she talks about challenges with picking your partner in your life and, you know, making those difficult decisions about work-life family balance. And so I think some of those sessions that we did that might have been more focused on women, we tend to try to steer away from those now, but I will tell you some of the most, on the other side of that sword, though, is some of the sessions that we've had about women as leaders in a male-dominated world, especially us in the utility world. That has always been well attended, and I think actually the men appreciate the insight that we can give them when they come to these sessions.
I actually, Gail, this is Becky, I actually concur so much with what you just said, because I think years ago, and I'm showing my age here, but I've been in the industry for probably over 30 years, and the women's organizations used to concentrate more on sort of, here we are, you know, and here, we're mad about this type of thing, and it's really evolved into a very positive situation, whereas some of the issues, while some of them still exist, are really more appropriate for those face-to-face little networking meetings that you have, that you might be able to talk over some of the issues with someone confidentially or in a smaller group setting, whereas a larger organization is probably not as conducive to those kinds of conversation and is much more about, okay, how do we advance the women in our organization, whether it's personally or professionally, so that they feel really good about themselves.
Well, I've had one more question come in. It's, I think it's directed toward the EPRI speakers. It says, besides your steering committee and office leads, how many people are involved in planning the events throughout the year?
So we were just doing an assessment of that, and we found that for this past year in 2013, we had over 40 people involved in one way or another in planning all of the 15 different events that we had. So it will depend on the event itself. For instance, we have a Bring Your Kids to Work Day. It used to be Bring Your Daughters, but now it's Bring Your Kids. And that requires a lot more support, obviously, because there's several different offices, several different people coming in. On the other hand, there might be an event where we just really bring in a speaker. We have Neva Fox from our Charlotte office who brought in Paula as the speaker, and she basically did that on her own. And then the office lead supported her with the logistics.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, ladies, we're near the top of the hour, and so we want to be respectful of your time and conclude promptly. So I want to let the attendees know that if your question was not answered, send your question or follow up with Denise Mullendor with the CS Week office, and she'll forward those questions on to the presenters and have some after webinar follow-up for you. I want to remind everybody again that CS Week in Conference 38 is May 5th to the 9th at the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center in San Antonio. And please do not forget the Women in Utilities Networking Reception. You'll definitely want to hear Dr. Julie Albright with the University of Southern California as the keynote. She has been a favorite for the conference for the past 2 years, I believe. So that's a great draw. And also to hurry so that you save $100 off of on-site registration. You can facilitate your registration online at our website, www.csweek.org. And with this, I want to thank once again our presenters, and then give them a moment to say their last remarks, and then we'll conclude the webinar.
Well, this is Gail. I again am available to answer any questions, and I say good luck to you guys. If you are starting your resource group or you're moving on, I think it's great. I appreciate it so much. So I hope you do too.
And this is Becky from EPRI, and I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to share our experiences, but we're always looking for new ideas. So anytime you want to partner with us, have an opportunity, potential, or if you are starting a new organization, we'll be very glad to help you. This is what it's all about, supporting each other. Thanks.
And this is Barbara. I'll give a final thank you to all the participants and also to CS Week for organizing this so beautifully today. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Thank you all, too. And with this, we'll conclude the webinar.